So we've got a situation where people, I think, are beginning to cover themselves in this very risky situation, whereas the establishment still doesn't get it. It's an extraordinary situation. Normally it's the other way around. You know, you follow the establishment in order to make money, but it's going to be their undoing. Markets will come back and take over pricing. I'm sure you found the same thing, you know, talking to various people around the world in the, you know, in the sort of the retail trade, as it were, selling bars, coins and so on and so forth. They've never been busier. And that gives me great hope, because the ordinary person has got a greater grasp of what's going on than these bloody hedge fund managers. I mean, they really have. It just amazes me that hedge funds, if you look at their track record dealing in the gold market or the gold paper futures, whatever market, they buy at the top and they sell at the bottom. And do you remember we used to call these people the masters of the universe? I mean, they're idiots. They are, quite honestly, they're complete idiots. If I was to make a prediction, I think that the direction in which Putin is taking this is that he will substitute these rubbish currencies, which at the moment he is prepared to take for his oil, energy and commodity exports, with a new trade currency, which will be based on gold. And because there is so much more bank credit contraction to come, the slump, and that's what it is, we must not mince words over this, the slump is going to be extremely serious. How do the central banks respond to this? Well, the answer basically is that government deficits will shoot up, they will finance it in the bond markets, they will have to reverse quantitative tightening into quantitative easing, and then we will see the currencies begin to collapse. Ergo, you've got to earn gold, because that is your escape route from what is actually happening. It's as simple as that. Very, very hopeful that the one good thing that will come out of this is sound money from the Asian bloc. Because if they do that, then we will have no alternative but to follow them. We won't follow them immediately, but we will follow them in time. I mean, I've always taken the view that for Russia and China to declare their true gold reserves would be rather like a financial nuclear weapon. We do know now, officially, that between the central bank's reserves and other Russian government accounts, they've got over 12,000 tons of gold. Now put that against America, which claims it's got 8,134 tons, yet to be verified. And you can see that the situation in terms of gold, which remember legally is money, everything else is credit. That's the legal position, whatever the politicians say, whatever the economists say. Under those circumstances, you can see that legally it puts Russia in a more powerful position financially than America. The other thing I would say about the Russians is that their economic analysis is not bound up in the Keynesian fallacies, which we live with all the time. Our markets, are driven by it. Government policy is driven by it. Interest rate policy is driven by it, and it's all rubbish. They see through it, and you can see from the speeches, the very few speeches that Putin makes on the subject of the Western's economic and monetary policies, that he sees it, he understands it. And that tells me that this analysis, that they actually understand the role of gold as money, and this must be returned to at some stage, I think that's very important. The difference is that from being a nuclear option, I think what the Russians and Chinese are now seeing as a result of our actions is that they need to do it for defensive purposes rather than offensive purposes. And that's a major, major shift. So I'm very hopeful that we will get a return to some sort of sound money. I'm sure they'll make a hash of it. I don't trust any government to get these things right first time. But at least, I mean, you're looking at over half the world's population potentially in the SCO, EAEU and BRICS, mixture. Over half the world's population. We're only about 20% in NATO and our supporters. So the majority of the world could well move towards accepting gold as money and the backing for their currencies. And that, I think, is desperately important. The markets will take over the pricing of everything in the not too distant future. Now, whether that's triggered by Eurozone banks collapsing, which I think is very much on the cards at some stage, currencies, they're all falling into new low ground. Chinese yuan, Japanese yen, sterling, and also the euro. And, the strength in the dollar is just illusory. It's not strength in the dollar at all. All it is falling, other currencies falling faster than the dollar. And, look at the gap between the loss of purchasing power of currencies and interest rates. I mean, by the time you take into account that, increased risk and all the rest of it, interest rates are at least less than a third of where they should be. I mean, they should increase by multiples, not by 0.75% as we're, or 0.1%, which we're hanging our hats on this afternoon. I mean, that's complete nonsense. This is a major, major mispricing the whole way across the global financial system. And it's going to crack. And when it cracks, it will crack big. The idea of a currency or a medium of exchange is that when you do a transaction, you and I will agree what a pound is, but we might argue about what we're buying. I mean, if I'm buying, I don't know, something like an antique table off you or something like that, we're going to haggle around the price of the antique table. We're not going to haggle over the value of the currency. But actually, when you look at the commodities, we should be haggling over the currency, not the commodities. It's an upside down world we live in, and it's been created by, if you like, trying to escape from the discipline of sound money. And this is crazy. It is completely crazy.